But when I was watching it, I was like, what? What?
So sometimes I'll do a poetry, but I have 2 Long Islands, and I don't want to gamble with my new poem because I be done remixed it and ended up somewhere else. This is my shout out. Nice to meet you, brothers.
Hey, nice to meet you.
That's what's up.
I know when I need a Hallmark card, I'm calling Marlon now. I'm getting.
When was the last time you saw a man cry? I don't mean in the movies. I mean in real life. Most of us can't even remember, or maybe we've never seen it. But behind that silence, there's pain. There's pressure, and there's a story that's never been told. This episode isn't about being soft. It's about being real. Because right now, men are checking out, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, at rates we've never seen before. And if we don't start talking, we do not start healing. So welcome to the Mental Cypher Podcast. Today, we're breaking the silence. I have with me my guests for the day. Starting with you, please introduce yourselves, gentlemen.
I'm Robert Sawyer. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. Been a therapist for almost 17 years, and I love what I do.
My name is Marlon Ferdinand. On the poetic front, I'm known as Marlon POW, the power of words. I am a registered nurse with a focus in mental health and psychiatry for many years. I'm a firefighter with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, and which this year will be year 20. Okay. And I'm retired military of 30 years, half of that Army, half of that Air Force officer.
Reverend Sherelle Harris. Pastor True Love Praise and Worship Church. We have an Opelika zip code, but we're located in Miami Gardens. I've been pastoring there for the last 2.5 years. I started out preaching the gospel in January of 2012, January 8th. I was under the leadership of my pastor, Reverend Dr. Ransbury Thomas Sr., New Generation Missionary Baptist Church in Opelika. So I've been with here majority of my life, and God spoke to me to go out and pastor, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm in a church, amen. We're growing. Vibe. I love my ministry. They love me. I pray they do, but but no, they do. We're a small congregation, but we're growing, and God's hand is upon us, and we have fun. We talk.
That's good.
Yeah, we have fun.
That's good. That's good. So, why do you think so many men struggle to talk about relationships, and why? Why they don't want to talk about how it affects them emotionally?
Well, I think we're reared up as young men to not be vulnerable. I think the balance of masculine, feminine. We've been told that we should be on our masculine, which really doesn't give us the balance we need to be emotionally available. It's sort of forced down our throats somewhat through pain and having to have tears, and when it isn't cool, and crying in private is real. As a young man, there's a lot of lessons you have to learn on your own, because, they say the downloads and the uploads of your parents are way different from the ones we have now. So forgive them for what you learned.
Facts. What do you think, Rob?
Why men aren't talking about relationships or struggling about relationships?
Yeah. How does it affect them emotionally? Like, why are they not talking about it?
I think men are socialized that talking about feelings makes them weak. Vulnerability is weak. Anything that suggests that you aren't strong makes you weak. And in this world, of being weak is death. So I'm not going to show you my weakness. You might use it against me. I'm not going to let anybody know that I'm not always strong. Right. But it's just this facade that everyone has weakness. We know everyone needs to be vulnerable or has vulnerability. But if we're told emotions are going to be our downfall, why would I share that with anybody?
Right. So what happens when men suppress pain from a breakup or a failed relationship, in your opinion?
It just seeps out into the next relationship and other areas of their life through anger, through addiction, through just disconnecting and disappearing. but those kind of things are typically rewarded. You've seen the video. You be on social media, dude gets broken up with, beast mode. Now he's in the gym, and we're all like, "Oh man, this is great."
Right.
That's fuel. But
Right.
man, no, that's literally just his pain. That it's easier for him to do that than to cry or than to talk about it.
The reason I believe that is because the world gives women the opportunity to grieve, to cry about it, to hang out with the girls. But for men, we believe it's the stigma of we have to be strong emotionally, that we supposed to take on this, even if we're hurt, because of barbershop talks and locker room talks. We don't have that vulnerable talk about what's going on in our life or in relationships. We try to keep it separate, even though it may affect us, because we'll never say, man, she hurt me. That cut me deep. And the reason, and most men try to get over it through drinking, drugs, or sex, and just keep trying to go on. But what it's really doing is damaging us for the next person.
Yeah. So it's a term I heard. Obviously, I've been through some things, but I started beginning to study myself.
Okay.
And, I was trying to study women and how they think. And I heard this, I don't remember her name, but I heard this one sister say on a podcast, come healed.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come healed, I understood what she was saying. Basically, do the work before you step into the arena to begin to date or be with other people. And I think that's very important, that what you just said. In these barbershops, here's the thing. I've been to the barbershop, not a lot because I cut my own hair, by the way. But I know what it is. I know the energy. And the crazy thing is, now that I'm hearing this, we can't even be vulnerable in the barbershop.
Yeah.
We can't even say, she hurt me.
Yeah.
Or my kid hurt me. Or I lost my job and, I've been there. We can't show any kind of emotion.
Correct.
Outright. So there's another video I was watching, and this guy, he was a kung fu specialist, and he said, men can cry. It's okay to cry. You just have to be very selective where you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because this world will judge you in 5 seconds and label you as weak when that is not the case.
That's right.
And it's sad because
But we are not
woman is
allowed.
not an option a lot of times. Your
But
woman
like he
is
said
simply
earlier,
not
the
the
ladies
option.
get all the lanes to do
Yeah,
that
cry in
in
front of 'em.
public, at a bus
I learned
stop,
that.
at
Yeah.
the grocery, at the dentist's office. We in the gym and we say something like, man, she hurt me. Man, everybody gonna look at you, man. You better pump that iron, boy. It's 250.
Yeah.
What you doing?
Grab these dumbbells.
What's up, man? You know you got 250 on your chest, right?
Yeah.
Come on, I spot
So
you.
what do? You gonna push it, or you gonna let it fall on your chest?
No.
Nobody don't want no 250 pounds busting on their chest.
Yeah.
So we keep it bottled up.
But there's a saying that fear doesn't stop death. It stops life. And, there's a fear of being vulnerable, being recognized as weak. We're even our culture as far as hip hop, you can't be weak in hip hop. It's part of who we are. We have to overinflate our ego to kind of even line up with the masses. And basically, you could only be self-reflective and continue to grow. As a youth, even a young man in the military, the level and amount of deaths that I've seen in each one of my job, it made me clearly have to know, man, you have to figure out a way to heal on your own. So, deep breathing, yoga, acupuncture, scriptures. It was a couple of modalities that I had to look at because, even after Desert Storm and all these things, wow, you went and fought for us, but you come back. I remember my first 4th of July, going to see Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen with my daughters, all 4 of them. I'm the dad. They holding on to me. But it wasn't until that movie, I heard the it's coming, but I was shaking and I was like, Dad, you all right? And I remember how embarrassed I was that even I didn't realize how much it affected me. Mm-hmm. And that's before you get to the relationship with men, women, what traumas you may have with mom, dad. So I had no choice but to really go deeply and dig in. Mm-hmm. I think one of my therapy.
What gave you that kind of fortitude to even know that you needed to do that? How did you recognize that?
I knew that I can't just be driving in this car and an anxiety attack just slapped me upside the head. I had to go deeper. Mm-hmm. Since I never felt particularly bright, even in high school, there's the joke, dark-skinned brothers didn't get in style till like around 94, 95.
Wesley Snipes.
So Wesley Snipes put us on the map. But so I had no choice in a way to walk by faith and not by sight. Mm-hmm. And I never liked the term fake it till you make it. But in essence, that's exactly what I had to do. So I had to learn like, hey, you did all right. Like, I had to be my own in many ways.
Right.
Sort of like, we see the movie like Forrest Gump. Mm-hmm. We see it like some dude who's kind of goofy. That can't happen. He's in the right place at the right time. And he just simply said, okay, but essentially, that's what I had to do. I mean, I had a little bit more swag than Forrest Gump, but essentially my faith walk and just trusting in the design and accepting I'm going to get bruised up. Mm-hmm. And there may not be anybody out there handing out Band-Aids. So I'm proud of who I've become, but it wasn't an easy job.
Was there ever like social pressure to not face things that you've emotionally, specifically?
Well, it's interesting you to ask that question because I didn't recognize how much I didn't speak to people until you asked that question, sort of. I really had to kind of walk this walk more alone than I'm prepared to accept. I mean, I had a dad. I had my mom. Mm-hmm. And, I've been my dad's barber since I was 17. And I was always able to pull things, but there's a certain time that they've maxed out what they can feed you. Mm-hmm. And you got to be on your own ground. You have to be able to look within and say, all right, enough looking for the validation of your peers. It come in handy. I learned a lot even being a firefighter because at the stations, you got so many different personalities. And then you realize how much you're not alone. It took even being at a fire station to hear people share their story. And I was like, wow, we got the same story. Even with things like narcissism, you don't realize and learn what it is until you hear other people finish your sentence. So there's a lot of silent learning that comes in handy. And you still have to say when the student appears, the teacher would arrive. Yeah. When the teacher appears, the master would arrive. Mm-hmm. So there's a journey that we all have to decide to go on, but everybody doesn't want to be better. Everyone doesn't want to learn. I think that was what I offered the world, and one of the ways with my poetry. That was my therapy.
Yeah, let's tap in on that. I appreciate that. So with the poetry and the music, Marlon Ferdinand, a.k.a. POW, I've been listening to your work for quite some time. Has any of your work been inspired by heartache, breakup, loss, these different things that trigger men to actually go in a nutshell or submit to, controlled substances, depression? How, in your opinion, how does hip-hop reflect or help men heal through music? How would you explain that?
I think music itself is therapy. Yeah. But the average hip-hop song isn't designed to be therapy, unfortunately. It can be, but what's popular on the radios is not really in line with what's best for us always.
That is true.
And that's by a grand design.
Yeah.
Now, as far as spoken word poetry and my writing, which is generally almost everything is to lift up the masses. I have many stories. I got stories about being a father before going to war. I have, things about being in the military. Interestingly enough, I do have a poem in the chamber. It would be my first time really talking about pain and love because I had too many other things to say to be that transparent in public about hurt. Which was interesting. I'm an uncle in the game of spoken word. Right. Back then, it only came in two flavors, anger and love. and the revolution will not be televised.
Right.
But I was sort of one of the first poems to have these other stories that people wasn't talking about, you know, military. And, you know, you see my, but, you know, I'm going through a couple of things even now. And what I'm learning, a lot of the poems that I wrote for the masses, only after my pain, you realize, man, that was for you.
Yeah, you're digesting it differently.
Yeah, he's like,
It's,
you know.
it's taking a whole different hold. All of a sudden, it's almost like brand new.
Yes, it's a different perspective. It's like a new set of glasses.
Right. You got a whole spectrum of different lenses that you're looking at the stuff that you already wrote.
Absolutely.
So it's like somebody else wrote it for you.
Absolutely. That was well said. Yeah. It's like I get to learn from an angle that came out of me. Because essentially, it's most of my poems are divine downloads from God anyway.
Right.
It's like you write it and it's a straight line. And sort of like it becomes 3D like on a sci-fi movie. You pull it apart and you see it like, whoa. And it's like, ooh, I could put an accent here. I can get loud here. I could put a comma. I can make this a joke. I could put a little accent right here. You know, I could play with it and and then find ways to have fun even in the most hurt. You know, humor does kind of put a different touch on your most piercing poems. And that's one of the things I try to do, you know?
I had to apologize to my boys before I started to learn the aspect of mental health in this. Because when they would cry, I would say, stop crying like a girl. But what is crying like a girl? But in reality, they were expressing their emotions. But because it was told to me and it was brought down, I was just teaching them a broken system.
Right.
But until I really got to fix myself and understand it, I had to apologize to them. It's okay to express your emotions. It's okay.
Right.
If you hurt or you feel inside. One of the beauties is I have a 2-year-old, and I get to watch cartoons again. And one of the cartoons yesterday, matter of fact, it was a dad with his baby, and it was saying it's okay for you to have emotions because that's what you're going to go through. If you feel sad, it's okay to talk to somebody. And so, that was some of the things I had to do.
I'm gonna give you a shout out for that because a lot of men miss that. They miss that lesson as fathers. Some get it, some don't. But I have this saying now: when you have children, if you have children, or if you have nieces and nephews, or what I would say is, be mindful that they're actually teaching you. They're actually teaching you. The same way you think that you're teaching them, they're teaching you. They're teaching you how to be empathetic for someone other than yourself.
That's a magic word, compassion, empathy.
Yeah.
And we're taught that that's incompatible with being a boss or a manager and a job. They almost respect, like, yeah, I like the way you just fired him. You ain't think nothing about it. But I think about what you said about, because I cut my own hair too, and I used to hear how therapeutic a barbershop can be. And I could easily say the fire stations would probably be my barbershop.
Right.
However, I don't even have to go back that far. In this month, 2 colleagues that are firefighters that I know personally and respect and really good friends with committed suicide.
Wow.
This month on the news. Rest in peace to both of them. Now, just between here and September, I lost one of my closest fry brothers. We went in fire rescue together. We came in Sigma together to cancer.
Okay.
So we're 3 times more likely to get cancer as firefighters.
Right. Yeah. The smoke.
Just right off the gate.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we see traumas all day, every day. So there's a part of you. I remember hearing the violins, especially like with kids, you know, car accident. The mom just realized my baby was in the car. Then we find him maybe 8 hours later with car seat on top of a roof on the other side of the highway. So these are the things that we have to find a way to navigate through. And I just had to tell myself, Marlon, you just here to be the help. You can't leave home with this. I really go home with these stories to my family. I usually would bring the funny ones. Like one day this guy got in a car accident and this little, just the other day, and had a little pony he was trying to steal. and you sweating beads, smelling like alcohol. You know, these are funny, but I don't bring that home.
Yeah.
And I try to get it off of me, and I had to. And that's poetry is part of my therapy. I would run circles around people in the amount of death that I've seen, just between the military and fire rescue. Not even adding my nursing career.
Wow.
And mental health, I was squeezed into that by accident as an agency nurse, and I found out this is where I was supposed to be. It let me know that mental health isn't about a whole bunch of dems who crazy. It's a whole bunch of us's who were 2 mortgage payments, 1 car accident, 1 family member loss of away from a line that we didn't even know existed. Wow. So this therapy is real. We don't know. So it's all OJT for us. And it's frustrating how crying is weak. Man, the amount of tears I try to, I've had some good ones. I remember being in Afghanistan.
Wow. You got to hold
and
that
I
back.
cried for about, I cried for about 45 minutes to an hour. I'm hearing the bombs, but it wasn't just being in Afghanistan. I think I bought about 4 years back, and it was triggered by one of my good friends. They have church and different things, and it was actually a poetry venue in Afghanistan that I was back. Yeah, they had made a Captain Ferdinand's Corner because I was therapy for so many people. Wow. But man, I came in the hospital and saw this person swollen up, and I'm looking at the name. I didn't even recognize it was my boy, and I was like, man, this is what happens. I cried for a good hour, and I realized I was lighter. Oh,
yeah.
It's healing.
It's healing. There's toxins being released. Our body is brilliant and is ingenious, but it's necessary. We can't hold these things in. It's self-imploding. It's toxic.
Yeah, because the longer you hold it in, it becomes a bomb.
Yes.
And then you explode on somebody, and they say it was hello, but by you holding it in, happens, they get all of that, and it's just not even for them.
Yeah. It'll show up in your blood pressure. It'll show up in your labs. It'll show up in your eyes.
Yeah.
It'll show up in your jitteriness.
A lot of us.
Healing is necessary.
Healing is very necessary. Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit, Robert. How do childhood experiences or trauma shape how men show up in relationships later?
I think for all of us, the first lessons you get on relationships are the relationships you see. So, it's your primary socialization. What is normalized for you as a child, it becomes normal. Mm-hmm. If you grow up in a healthy environment, we hope that is what you would consider normal and repeat. Mm-hmm. But a lot of us don't grow up in healthy or stable environments. Yeah. A lot of, when I started as a therapist, I worked with children.
Right.
And so for a lot of those kids, I was the first black man that they saw consistently.
Wow.
And that's crazy.
Man. Wow.
Everybody got a dad, everybody got an uncle, a cousin or something, but they're only seeing me once a week for an hour.
And that's a whole lot for them.
A lot of them don't
it's
have
shocking,
that in their life. So
yeah.
if that's the norm for you, the number of kids that I've had, that will, like, let's say we're at the school and we were meeting in the library. The number of kids I've had that they sit at the computer, they're gonna go to the prison website, the county site, and show me their dad and their uncle and their cousin and it's like this is what's normal for this kid.
Yeah.
So in terms of relationships, in terms of showing up, that's just what you're gonna repeat.
Right.
And when everyone around you is like that too, that's the norm. So you're going to aspire to be normal. You don't want to stand out and be weird. So I think we just repeat these things that we've seen. We repeat these things that we've been told.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah, this for me it's shocking, but it's not shocking when I do the math of the percentage. I did some research a couple years ago. I call it the 70-30. 70% and 30% makes 100%. We all know that. So the reason why I call it the 70, it's not quite 70. People might come for me in the comments, it's 60-something%. To me, I round off stuff. I learned after 5, it is that next number. So if it's at 68%, for me, it's 70%. 70% of young black kids are born out of wedlock, out of a man in the house. And that kind of matches with what you're saying. So they don't see an example of a man in the house for whatever reason. This podcast is not about blaming, having a gender war. These are facts, and we're here to not be a part of the problem. We're here to be a part of the solution. That's what I'm trying to do, to get this message out. But for whatever reason, that number is very, very alarming. That means men like us are not in these homes. They're not seeing a black man wake up and cook breakfast for them. They're not seeing a black man cry. They're not seeing a black man hug them. They're not seeing a black man be something other than what they see on TV or what we're promoting.
You ain't keeping it real.
So when they go out and they see it, whether it's a child or a woman,
cooking.
They're like, oh, is this an anomaly? What's going on? This is fake. No, this is real.
It seems like the memo only came out 10, 15 years ago that we even mattered, that we're important, the father, the black male, because it just seemed like the studies are just now showing how handy we come in and how much we affect the jail, the presence, how those numbers would drop with or without a woman, actually. Just our presence, statistically, would swing that pendulum hugely.
Right.
It is sad because, and I grew up with my father.
Yeah.
My parents been married 57 years, and I had that. So I used to have to share my dad with a lot of my friends. Right. He was the consistent, even in my own neighborhood. When I'm cutting people here, my dad was everybody's one-stop shop. So, I was blessed to have that. And still, these traumas, I think our generation didn't judge our parents the way these later generations do. So there's nothing, you just going to suck it up. Yeah, you got a spanking. Yeah, I got my butt. We ain't complaining.
Right.
And so we don't judge that. So you might not be 25, 30 years old before you even recognize that in the books that it was a trauma. You don't always know that at that time. It's like, wow. But ultimately, we're here to be the best version of ourselves. Right. And it will take a trauma. It would take both. You can't be your best version without getting slapped around a little bit, to be honest with you. And so it's humbled me. Even with war, I see how even getting fired at a job or, I remember being at UPS and I swung on a manager, but I was like, if I ain't swing on him and get fired months later, I wouldn't have went back to University of Miami. I wouldn't have got back in school. And so, you could be mad and still angry, but, you can retroactively heal if you in your now. They said we're so disgruntled about yesterday, so anxious about tomorrow that we miss all our todays. But your now, that's your play.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I'm going to pivot over to Pastor real quick. I have a question. How can the church support men through emotional trauma caused by failed relationships, which is a big, big deal?
Is being honest. Is having a group of men just come together and be honest and not having that judgment over their heads. Mm-hmm. Because, to come to a church, many people feel like they're supposed to come in perfect, but it's not the fact. We're imperfect. Yeah. And we're coming to be better. And so if you just have the men, one of the things I do talk to my men at the church. They'll come to me and they'll tell me about a situation. And one of the questions I always ask them, how does it make you feel? What is it doing to you? How are you feeling right now in this moment? Because it's showing that it's compassion and that I'm caring what you're going through. Because outside of it, when you say we don't talk, and they're coming to me, I just make sure they have it. But go back to your question, it's important, I believe, for men just to be vulnerable with one another, because what I may be going through, Marlon went through it already.
Right.
But guess what? By me opening up and saying it.
Yeah.
Now he's saying, you know what? I done been through that.
Yeah,
let
you
me
can
help
connect.
you.
Yeah.
It shows.
Absolutely.
It also shows that I'm not the only one that's weak. Well, I'm not the only one that's going through.
Right.
I'm not the only one that's been through something. Because you'll never know nobody's story unless you open up and tell.
That's good. I'm glad you run you're a pastor that way. I'm sure you know this. Not all pastors are like that. Some of them don't even have time. Some of them don't even give you that time, man. They just, unfortunately, and again, we're not here to downplay anybody, but I'm just thankful that you're a pastor that actually asks men that, how are you feeling in this moment? That's very important because you don't know what nobody's going through.
Yeah.
Nobody don't really know. But if somebody asks you, and that's like saying, here's the mic.
Yeah.
And black men barely get the mic.
Yeah.
We're on the mic right now, but
Yeah.
normally we don't get no mic. We got to show up to work. We got to show up to father. We got to show up to friend. We got to show up to fight. We got to fight. We got to stand up. We got to go to sleep. We don't get no sleep. We don't eat right.
Yeah.
We got to hold down the family
You gotta
and
do
make
that,
it,
yeah.
and make it look easy.
Yeah, make it look easy.
But when you said that, how does that make you feel? Through all the stories and thought, it felt like, I'm over a half century years old, and it felt like, I only heard that question barely enough to count on my fingers.
Right.
Wow.
Nobody don't ask you that.
Who
Who asks you that?